You see, I have the Bible up here. It's a pretty big Bible. I'm not a preacher, but I brought the Bible, and we've been talking around this discussion now for the last 2-3 weeks or more, and there's a reason for that. Because everybody who came to this meeting today had to pass these institutions with the parking lots crammed full of people. And these things are called churches, where the people are. And the churches, in many ways, become instruments to keep people away from struggle. And the question really before us, in my view, is that how can these people say that they follow Jesus? Or if the historical Jesus that we know about is real, and there's evidence that he was real, he was a revolutionary. And if Jesus was a revolutionary, then the question is, how can your preacher be such an Uncle Tom? And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at all these churches filled with African people. And I want to tell you something about it. I'm going to tell you what your preacher won't tell you. And you might not like me for saying it. When you go up and listen to this old silver-tongued, slick bootlicker, rubbing chicken bone, you don't have to be defenseless. You can go and you can know how to read this thing when you read it. But the first thing you need to know is that at the time of Jesus' birth, and we've talked about that in this meeting before, and I want to say some more about it. At the time of Jesus' birth, the Jews, like most people in the world that was known at that time, were dominated by the Romans. They were living under colonial domination, colonial bondage, just like African people here, and just like we have in various places around the world been living. The Jews lived under Roman domination. The Romans had what they call an empire. An empire is where a government of a people not only dominate and rule their own people, but many other peoples around the world. The Roman Empire was comparable to what America is today. America is an empire. It feels like it can tell people what to do, and if you don't do it, we'll attack you. You can't have this kind of weapon or that kind of weapon. We'll blow you up. We'll take your oil. We'll do all these other kinds of things to you. That's how Rome was during the day. And except it was a more honest, they call it an empire today, even though if you read certain kinds of documents and certain kinds of papers being written by the thinking representatives of the white power today, more and more they are referring to America as an empire. Except they don't call Bush an emperor, they call him the president. Well, back then they were more honest, they called him the emperor. Rome had an emperor. An emperor, an empire, you can see the connection between the names. An emperor is someone who rules over an empire. Now, the thing is that the people who are citizens of the empire, they live well because they live off the fruits of what the emperor brings from all over the world, all the oppressed peoples of the world. You find all their resources coming to the empire, coming to Rome. And they were coming from every place. The Jews, and I'm speaking of Jews, but Jews are just Semites who lived in what they now call the Middle East. Arabs are Semites, and there were all other kinds of people, Syrians and what have you, who are also Arabs, etc., who lived in the same area. And all of them had to pay tribute to Rome. So the Romans lived pretty well. The Rome, of course, is in Europe, as you know, right? Rome is in Europe. What they call Italy now is the headquarters of what Rome was, white people. And although it may or may not have been an issue at the time, the Jews were not white people. Jews got white lately, relatively lately. And the Jews were dominated by the Romans. And the Jews didn't want to be dominated by the Romans because any thinking human being wants to be self-determining. They don't want somebody else over them. They don't want somebody else dominating them. do they? They want to be a self. You can't have a national dignity if every time you look up there's somebody who's telling you how you have to do things and when you have to do it. And in fact, set terms for you, say you can't even act like a black person. Or you can't. Not in America if you're going to succeed. And everybody in here know that's the truth. You can, if you be too black, you will not succeed. You can't go on the job being black, right? You can't go nowhere being too black. You remember when they used to not hire you if you had dreadlocks, if you had cornrows, if you had afros, or any of those stuff. You can't be too black. Only when white people started getting dreadlocks was it cool. Yeah. So, and when they found out that dreadlocks didn't mean nothing for a lot of these old sellouts, and sometimes he had a dreadlock and a processed brain. You had dreadlock hair and a perm on your brain. You understand? So they discovered that, and they said, let the Negroes have dreadlocks. But that's how empire runs it. And when you have an empire, people are asking the question like about what happened to Mtundu. And Mtundu spoke out, and the police attacked him. And white people say, oh, the police don't act that way. And it's true, the police do not act that way. If you're citizens of the empire. If you were Roman citizens, the Roman police didn't treat the white people in Rome the way they was treating the Jews who were living in Israel. Treat you differently. Because one was a citizen and then one was a subject. There's a difference in being a citizen and a subject, right? So when Jesus was born, Rome was living, the Jews were living under Roman domination, and they had the same kinds of problem that you got today. Among the problems that you have when somebody else runs your affairs, you can't get along with each other. You notice that? And you say it all the time. Niggas just can't get together. You say it all the time. And one of the reasons it's hard for you to get along with each other is because you displace your anger. You mad with the ruling class. You stay mad with white people, but you done found out you disguise it even to yourself. Now you get insulted all the time. Almost every day you get insulted. And the reason you don't go behind the counter and snatch them up and do something damaging to them because they're going to say, call security. And before you know it, the police is going to be there. And then they're going to have you on the ground with your head in the cement, whooping you up and putting you in jail. And you're going to go to jail, and the white people going to say, yes, they did whatever the hell they said they did, and you're going to do some time. That's your reality. And you mad as hell. Your anger gets displaced. You ain't going to mess with that white person because you know what's going to happen to you. So with this displaced anger, who you take it out on? You take it out on the one who's closest to you. Take it out on your wife, on your husband, on your brothers, your sisters, your neighbors, and what have you. You stay mad. That's why when the brother step on your shoe, you want to kill him, cut him, do something to him, and the party, you know you do, on the one hand. But on the other hand, white people do stuff to you every day and do stuff to you that deserves a death penalty, and you don't even talk back to them, right? And so you have this displaced anger all the time. And the same thing was true with the Jews. Jews always upset. They say, well, Africans in this country got the highest rate of high blood pressure in the world. African men got the highest rate of prostate cancer than anybody on earth. And you don't know why. I know why. Because you got this repressed anger. You stay sick because you are so angry and you can't do anything with this anger, because if you do, white power would drop down on you like a lead balloon, and you know it. And so you contain and hold your anger into yourself. Then you also a little disturbed because white people have told you that if you want to succeed, in order to succeed in a white man's world, you got to act white. You don't feel white. And when you look in the mirror, you don't look white. But you got to do all those things to act white all the time. You got to learn perfect diction. You understand? In other words, you got to talk like white people. And you even have to learn how to walk like white people. When people talk about Michael Jackson, they say Michael Jackson did this terrible thing with children. And what I want to tell you that something is wrong with Michael Jackson, but they got the wrong disease. You want to look at child molestation, Michael Jackson is a victim of child molestation. When you see an African who is so messed up that he has internalized this whole concept of being white to succeed, that he mutilates himself to such an extent that he continues to mess up his face, that he looks like an old, sick white woman. This is somebody who is a victim of child molestation. Because you have to be like the oppressor, and so you're sick all the time. And you're angry with each other all the time. You're really angry with the white man, but you ain't gonna mess with him. Scared of him. You scared of him. You're scared to even be seen places with black people that white people don't want you to be seen with. You know, I ain't going there because if the white man, if my boss, if somebody hears about it, I'm gonna be in trouble. The police might know it, the white man might know it, my boss might know it. Ain't that a hell of a way to live? That's how the Jews were living too. And so they were always messing with each other. And so the Jews had what many people refer to as religion today. But it's not exactly religion. The reality is that every culture, every society has for itself an explanation of its place and destiny in the world. You won't find a society that cannot come up and has for itself. And this is an explanation that has come out of its own experiences as a people. Everybody does that. And the Jews had a way of life around which had emerged this philosophy. And the philosophy, of course, is tied up into now what you call the Bible. And the Jews had certain leaders who, ones who best interpreted and best understood and best expressed the notions that was in this philosophy that was found in the Bible. These were the teachers. They were called priests and things like that. Now, I'm not talking, when you talk about religion, you're talking about what white folk have taught you is something that you go to do every Sunday in church or in Bible study or something like that. I'm talking about a way of life. This is how the Jewish people, this is how all peoples emerged. They had a way of life. And philosophy grew out of this way of life and informed the people how they should act. For example, people would discover that eating the pig and stuff like that would kill you pretty soon. It will kill you sometimes, won't it? Because it has all these disease and tapeworms and all other kinds of things associated with it. So after the leaders of the society, the learned people in the society begin to sum up that the thing will kill you, he will have a vision that will say, God said, don't eat anything with cloven feet. Won't it? Don't eat anything like that because it'll kill you. If I told you, you're going to eat it anyway because I like them pork chops, you understand? But God told you not to eat, so write that down, you understand? And so you see, coming out of the experiences of the people, this philosophy and some science and some mysticism, because the reality is much of religion and from our society is organized around ignorance, what you don't know. If you don't believe it, I can tell you the main thing that persons who is very religious say to you when you say I'm not religious. They say, what you mean ain't no God? They won't give you evidence that there is. They can't say, well, if there ain't no God, then how the moon get there? And how the sun get there? And why it go round and round like it does? In other words, if you don't know the answer, it must be a God. So it's the religion organized around what? Ignorance. Yeah. The more you know, the more you move away from them. Yeah. Oh, yes. And so here you have like 2,000 years ago, was no satellites, was no Toyotas, was no cable television, was no telephone, was no indoor toilets, except maybe in Egypt. Yeah, that's right. Right? And 2,000 years, and the Roman kicking butt everywhere. Rome is doing it up. And the people who are oppressed by Rome want to find a way. And the Jews had this belief that someday there was going to come a leader a deliverer. And deliverer, what is a deliverer? They call it a Messiah. That's what Messiah means, a deliverer, someone who would deliver us. Because the Jews wanted to have their own government. They didn't want to be governed by the Romans. They wanted to have their own government. In those days, you didn't have governments that were comprised of Congress and Senate and Parliament and stuff like that. In those days, you had governments where there were kings. Isn't that right? And in such a place where there are kings, you call it what? A kingdom, right? And so the Jews wanted their own kingdom. And they believed that there was going to be somebody who would come and lead them to find their own kingdom. Not after you die, but right here on earth. Right here on earth. They wanted a kingdom. They wanted to get out from under the domination of the white people from Rome. But there were all kinds of organizations among the Jews, just like there are organizations among you. There was one organization that was called the Sadducees. And this was an old Uncle Tom organization comprised mostly of rich Jews. And they were religious, rich Jews, real rich Jews, not just, and so just like now, back then you could still be under foreign domination and get rich. And then there were the Pharisees. The Pharisees were also Uncle Tom sellout group, except the Sadducees were nonviolent. They were, some people call it pacifism, but I call it masochism. Right? The Sadducees believed in a nonviolent approach to everything. And then you have the Pharisees. The Pharisees believe in a legalistic approach to everything. Just like that. The Pharisees was key. They were ticklers about the law. And both groups were Uncle Tom groups. But they weren't the only groups among the Jewish people while the Jews were suffering this oppression. And the Romans used the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And they had a neo-colonial institution called a Sanhedrin, through which the Uncle Tom Jews exercised the law. And then, though, there were groups like the Zealots. The Zealots were revolutionaries, violent revolutionaries. I'm not making this up. You can check out your history. You can even check your Bible history. John the Baptist was a zealot. And John was a bad boy. He was a guerrilla. You heard what I said? He was a guerrilla. He was a revolutionary. And how do I know he was a guerrilla? Because even back there, during those times, John acted strange, they would call him, sort of like Nat Turner. He did. Check up on Nat Turner and then read about John the Baptist and see if they don't sound alike. And John the Baptist, he had a great following because many people thought John the Baptist was the Messiah, was the one that was going to come to lead them to this kingdom right here on earth. And John, he was running around baptizing people and telling them to repent, change your ways. Brothers and sisters, change your ways. He was trying to get them to come out from under the Romans. And they said that he wore clothes made out of camel hair. And they said his diet was grasshoppers and honey. This ain't somebody who hang out at the supermarket. You understand? This is somebody living off the land. This is a gorilla living off the land here. John the Baptist, check it out. John the Baptist, according to scripture, was also Jesus' cousin. In fact, he was born about 6 months earlier than Jesus. It's really interesting. An angel came and told John the Baptist's daddy, where's Nyabinga? What was his daddy's name? What was John the Baptist's daddy's name? Zachariah. Told Zachariah, said, look here. Say, your wife pregnant, Zach. Zach said, that ain't possible because I'm too old. You understand? I'm an old dude, you know. And the angel said, we gave her some holy Viagra. Say she pregnant. She pregnant. And say, I want you to name him John. Say, I ain't gonna let you talk no more till after the baby is born and you name him John. And Zach couldn't talk either until the baby was born. Say, what the baby's name? And somebody said, well, the wife, what was her name? Was that Elizabeth? Yeah. Said, we're gonna name him John. And they said, well, hey, you ain't got no family members named John. Why you gonna name him John? And so they went to Zachariah and said, what we gonna name him? And Zach wrote down John. And after that, John could talk. Now that was Mary's cousin, Elizabeth. And 6 months later, 3 months later or so, Jesus was born. And so here you have John the Baptist, who's moving around, has created a huge following. People follow him. They think he's the Messiah. And John is in trouble. And he's getting in trouble because he's talking about Herod. Now, Herod was the super Uncle Tom Jew. Herod was called the king of the Jews because his whole family for generations had been appointed by the Romans to be over the rest of the Jews. Masses followed John. Except on one day, John's wife's daughter did a dance. It must have been some kind of dance. Whose wife was it? Herod's wife. I'm sorry, Herod's wife. What did I say, John? Yeah, John apparently wasn't hooked up. But Herod's wife did this dance, and his daughter, Herod's wife's daughter, did this dance, and John liked it so much, he said, just tell me, I just do anything that you want, because the dance was so great. And so Herod's wife said, tell him to give you John's head on a platter, because John talking about us, putting us in a dozen and what have you. And so Herod he didn't want to do it because he knew it was going to be a problem, political problem for it, if he did it. But he done made this promise in front of all these people, so they did. He busted John, went and had him busted, and then they cut his head off. But before John had his head cut off, John ran around baptizing everybody, and Jesus came to be baptizing. Y'all know the scriptures, don't you? Yeah. What happened when he did? When he went out and he said, John, baptize me, what did John say? You the man. John said, you the man. Remember that? Isn't that what John said? You are the one. So it makes you think that Jesus must have been a zealot too. Exactly. Doesn't it? Jesus must have been a zealot too. And I know that you've been taught that Jesus was a non-violent little wimpy, sissy little guy. And I know you also been told that Christianity is everybody's religion. It ain't true. Christianity was this response, this thing that you now call Christianity, because there was no such, Jesus wasn't a Christian. Right. Jesus was a Jew. Right. And what happened was the people who believed that Jesus was the one who was sent. And they thought first, among others, because there were a lot of people who claimed to be the Messiah during that period of time. And they thought a lot of people thought John was the Messiah. And then John said, no, this is the one right here. This is the Messiah. And so, and Jesus, and so the Jews again were looking for a Messiah. And Jews are still today. You understand what I'm saying? The Jews are still today waiting for a Messiah, waiting for a deliverer. It's just those that followed this person thought that he was the Christ, which means Messiah, deliverer. They thought he was the Christ. That's where the term Christian comes from. This was the first group of Jews who thought that they could find this way to get rid of the Romans. Check up on your history. Yes, sir. I say that Jesus and Christianity, he wasn't talking about you. He wasn't talking about your black self. He was talking about Jews. Can I prove it? Please. We go to Matthew in this book. Matthew 10:5. Because Jesus had a program. And he had an organization. And he pulled together these 12 key persons in his organization. They all had different kinds of skills and talents and what have you. And he sent them out as organizers. He sent them out. You should read it, because if you want to know how to organize, they tell you right here how to organize, who to see, and when you get there, what to do. And all of this kind of stuff is right here. They're organizers that he sent out into the world to organize Jews, and just Jews, only Jews. He says, Matthew again, 10:5. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Do not go among the Gentiles. You know what a Gentile is? A Gentile is somebody who ain't a Jew. Do not go among the Gentiles. Don't go among no niggers, no Mexicans. No, do not go among the Gentiles, right? Do not go among the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. Do you know who the Samaritans are? Samaritans were people who were mixed marriages, Jews and Gentiles. He said, don't mess with no Gentiles, don't mess with nobody if they ain't no Jew, and don't mess with none of them who done hooked up with them white people. You understand? That's what he said. It's in there, Matthew 10:5. And he said more than that. He said, go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. And as you go, preach this message, the kingdom of heaven is near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Do not take along any gold or silver or copper in your belts. Take no bag for the journey, or extra tunic or sandals or a staff. For the worker is worth his keep. In other words, don't worry about taking anything with you. You're an organizer. Go among the people will take care of you. That's what it says right here in this Bible. In this Bible. I'm going to show you something else too. We go like to Matthew 10:15. He says, but I want to go before that, because I'm going to show you that this guy was an organizer. And he's organizing under dangerous circumstance, because the Romans will bust you and do something terrible to you. This is Matthew 10:11. Whatever town or village you enter, search for some worthy person there and stay at his house until you leave. As you enter the home, give it your greeting. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake the dust off your feet when you leave that home or town. Get out of there. They don't listen to you, just check out. Now he's concerned. He knows about the dangers there. If you go to Matthew 10:15, he says to let you know that he knows. He's talking about danger. This ain't no religious instructions. He says, I tell you the truth. It will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. You understand? He says, be on your guard. This is Matthew 10:17. Be on your guard against men. They will hand you over to the local councils and flog you in their synagogues. On my account, you will be brought before governors and kings as witnesses to them and to the Gentiles. And to the Gentiles. But when they arrest you, do not worry about what to say or how to say it. But the thing is, you understand, he's sending them out as organizers in a dangerous situation, because the Romans will bust you up. They'll put you in jail. They'll do terrible things to you. I know you don't believe me. He says, again, at 10:21, he said, brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. All men will hate you because of me, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. When you are persecuted, he says, in one place, flee to another. Flee to another. Get out of there. Split. Do the work. So, and then I know that a lot of people like to tell you that that Jesus was this little pacifist and who believed in nonviolence. Jesus was not a pacifist, y'all. If we look at Matthew 10:34, I'm reading here from the Life Application Study Bible, New International Version.
King James.
Yeah, you King James. He says again, 10:34. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. But a sword. He said, I'm strapped. Y'all understand? You have to be clear on that. Now, you have to be clear on that because you got to be looking and seeing who was most like Jesus. Jesus was not a snitch. You've got a situation here where we went to a church the other week, and there was a Negro there, had the whole police department there, and Reverend Murphy was talking about how good it was to lock up the black people and what have you. But Jesus was not a snitch. He did not work with the police. The snitches were the ones who turned Jesus into the police. Isn't that true? Wasn't the snitches who turned him into the police? First, there was an agent in his organization. There was an agent in his organization named Judas, wasn't there? Judas was an agent in the organization. And Judas went and told them, said, look here, I'll turn him over to you. Give me a little bit of money here. You understand? And I will turn him over to you. And then Jesus met him in the garden and ran up to him and kissed him on the cheek. Said, you'll know who it is because I'm going to kiss him. Is that in the scriptures? In his own organization, there was a Roman agent. That ain't nothing new. There's snitches in this organization. There's snitches all around. People who have lost themselves. Don't even belong to their communities and their people anymore. Don't even belong to themselves. They work for the white man. They come and sit up in your meetings, pretend to be your brothers and sisters, and they go and run back and tell the white man and turn you over to him every time. That's how Malcolm X died. That's how Martin Luther King died. You understand? They have to have somebody in your own group in order to be able to do it to you. They have to have somebody in your own community in order to be able to do it to you. So Jesus came to help deliver his people from Roman domination, to fight against Roman colonialism. And he pulled together an organization to try to do it. And he belonged to an organization that believed in struggle. And they were always trying to get Jesus, and snitches. And you had people, especially those who were always tied to the law. You can read them quoted in the newspaper in St. Petersburg all the time. These people were these ticklers for the law. You got to be for the law. Here you are from an oppressed community, and the oppressed community trying to fight back, and you hear this Negro who is speaking about the law, and whose law? Whose law? Not the law of the oppressed, but the law of the emperor. The law of the empire is what he's saying that you got to follow. And they were always working to try to trap Jesus. They weren't trying to send Jesus. This wasn't a religious question. They weren't trying to send Jesus to hell. They was trying to send him to jail. You'll go to Matthew 22:18. Or let's go to Matthew 22:16. And it starts off, and we go through 16 through Matthew 22nd. It says, then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words. They didn't have tape recorders. That's what they use on us now. They use tape recorders and what have you to back up the snitches. They sent their disciples to him with the Herodians. Teacher, they said, somebody got a burning spear? What is point number 4 in the burning spear? Quickly. That's free speech and political association. That's enough. Question. Wait a minute. Don't put it down. What is the point around taxes? Number three. That's point number. What does it say?
We want an end to all local, state, federal, and other taxation of black people by the U.S. government and any government.
Okay, now stop. Stop. Okay, so here we are, Matthew 22:15. Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. Teacher, they said, we know you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by men because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Caesar is the emperor. He's the Roman emperor. He's the one in charge. He's the one who's dominating. Is it right to pay taxes? They say. Why would they raise that question? Because the Romans were a foreign government that occupied them. Why would they have to pay taxes to the Romans? Why do they have to spend their $12 million of taxpayers' money to go downtown to Baywalk when Baywalk ain't even for the black people? So they're saying, do we pay taxes or not to Caesar? Because they wanted to say the wrong thing so they can put him in jail. Why was this being important? This ain't no religious question. This ain't no religious question. This is a political question. This is a question that can get you put in jail. You understand? Oh, yes. But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, this is 22:18, you hypocrites. Why are you trying to trap me? He said. Why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax. They brought him a denarius. And he asked them, whose portrait is this? And whose inscriptions? Caesar's, they replied. Then he said to them, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and God what is God's. You understand? In other words, I ain't answering that question. you ain't sending me to jail, not off that. Oh, no. It's there. It's there. You just got to know how to read it. You got to know what was happening. You got to know the history of the circumstances that you were dealing with. Jesus is trying to deliver the Jews from Roman domination. And the Romans and all the sellouts are trying to keep it from happening. I'm going to show you some more because I know you don't believe me. I'm telling you that he wasn't writing this for you. He was writing it for the Jews. And it's already been said here in Matthew who it was for. Say, don't go to the Gentiles and don't go to the Samaritans. Just go to the lost children of Israel. Jews. Yeah. Then you go to Matthew 26:55. Matthew 26:55, because when they busted Jesus, it was interesting. When they busted Jesus, what was that? 20 what? 26:55. When they arrested Jesus and they came and caught him in the garden and they busted him. So Jesus turned to him and he said, at that time, let me just go back. Let me just go up to, this is when Jesus is in the garden and Judas came up, kissed him and did all that other kind of stuff. And there was a whole crowd of people coming to arrest. They had swords and clubs to come bust Jesus. So he says to them, am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? This is what Jesus said. Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs to capture me? That's what he said. That's what he said. And then he says, every day I sat in the temple courts teaching and you did not arrest me. And nobody didn't arrest him when he was in the courts, right? You don't know why they didn't bust him? Because the power of the people, they were scared of the people, so they caught him when he was by himself in the garden. So now you're coming to bust me for a rebellion. For a rebellion. This is what you came for. Citing the riot. Citing the riot. Citing the riot. And to make sure that you understood that Jesus was quite clear on what he was about, Because when he was before Pontius Pilate, who was the Roman governor over the Jews, right? He was running stuff there. Pontius Pilate, the governor asked him, he said, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus' response was, "Yeah." He said, well, he didn't say it in the vernacular. He said, "Yes, it is as you say." In other words, you said it. You said it. I'm the one. I'm the kid. What yours say?
Which verse you looking at?
I'm looking at Matthew 27:11.
Oh, 27:11?
Yeah, 27:11. Yeah, he said, "I'm the one." That's me. Go ahead.
And Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, "Art thou the king of the Jews?" And Jesus said unto him, "Thou sayest." I'm going to 12.
No, that's good. He said, "Thou sayest," in there. And this one, he says, "Yes, it is as you say." Yeah. You said it. In other words, you said it. So, and, I'm saying this because you got all these Uncle Toms, among other things, who pretend, like they trying to be like Jesus. And Jesus was going in them joints, kicking over the tables, what have you, wasn't he? Said, no, said kicked over the money tables. Said, you guys, it's a den of thieves. Kicked over the money table. You guys just making money in here. You got this program and that program, and most of y'all working with the Romans, working with the empire. Most of y'all get, getting money to tear down houses on 22nd Street and 18th Avenue and what have you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I want to just tell you this right here. I want to go to Luke now. Luke has some interesting stuff to say too. And you go to Luke. Let me see what 22. Luke 22, verses 35 through 38, and it was some interesting stuff here that he had to say. 35 through 8, because again, Jesus was not a pacifist. Jesus was not a somebody. He believed in turning the other cheek, but who was he talking to when he said turn the other cheek? He was talking to Jews about each other. He was saying, y'all got to stop this fighting each other. You got to stop messing over each other. You got to stop doing all of this stuff. He was talking to the Jews. He wasn't saying let the Romans wipe you out. He wasn't saying let your oppressors do this thing. He was talking to the Jews about what kind of relationship they should have among themselves. And at Luke 22, 35, 38, Jesus asked him, he's already told Peter, you're gonna double cross me, man. When before the rooster crow, you're gonna be denied me 3 times. And the truth is, when they busted Jesus, I told you they had an agent in his organization. When they busted Jesus, of course, one of Jesus' followers, they say it was Peter, he took out his sword and cut the guy's ear off, and Jesus stopped it and put the ear back on, right? And then all of them ran. They split and left Jesus by himself. Jesus was left there by himself. Everybody, the whole organization took off. Left Jesus there by himself to deal with this stuff. But anyway, Jesus was at this Last Supper. Jesus asked them, this is 22:35, Luke 22:35. Then Jesus asked them, when I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack for anything? Nothing, they answered. 36, he said to them, but now, if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag. This is when Jesus knows he's going to die. You understand? He said, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Oh, if you don't have a piece, sell your suit. You understand? Get a piece. Be naked if you want to, but get yourself a piece. That's it. Is that in the Bible you got there? Oh, yeah. Say, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. You understand? And the disciple said, 38, the disciple said, see, Lord, here are 2 swords. That is enough, he replied. You understand? These 2? Yeah. So this is the Jesus that these Uncle Toms say they believe in. The ones who condemn the masses of the people who support the emperor, support the empire, but who work against the interests of their own oppressed brothers and sisters. And Jesus was clear on it. He was against them rich Jews. He said that it'd be easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it will be for a rich man to get into heaven. Why? Because if you are rich under colonial domination, then you cannot work for independence of the people because you get your wealth by being tied to white power. So you got to be free from white power to overturn white power. It's what Malcolm X was talking about when he talked about the house Negro and the field Negro. You see, the house Negro who live with the white man in the white man's house, if the people who are being enslaved in the field come and try to burn down the white man's house, well, you burning down the house Negro's house too. The house Negro's going to snitch on you. He's going to tell on you because he's got a stake in the existence of slavery. Same thing right here. Same thing right here. This is what Jesus was talking about. And I'm going to tell you one more thing. I'm going to Luke 23:13, because I want you to be clear on what this thing was about. Luke 23:13. Pilate called together the chief priests and rulers and the people and said to them, I'm going to read 13 through 18. Listen to this. And said to them, you brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. Pilate is the one who has to make the decision of whether Jesus is going to die. He said, you brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he has sent him back to us. See, Herod's scared because the real deal is that Jesus got this following, and what it could mean for Herod, and Pilate don't want to mess with it either because of political reason. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish him and then release him. With one voice, they cried out, away with this man. Release Barabbas to us. And then it says, Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. So rebellion and insurrection was going on everywhere. Now here's John the Baptist, the gorilla. Camel's coat made out of camel's hair, eating honey and grasshoppers. And a whole bunch of people followed him, but Jesus came later, and Jesus had a program. Jesus had a health care program. Didn't he have a health care program? He sent all of his disciples. He said, go heal the sick, didn't he? And then Jesus walked around healing and making people better, didn't he? He was making the poor and oppressed people like that. He had a health care program. He had an economic program, too. Listen to me. He was a socialist. How the hell do you think it's possible for somebody to feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish except through cooperative planning and cooperation? You can't do nothing by yourself, but you get everybody together, you find out you got more than what you think you got. Kicked over the tables in the temple and what have you. So Jesus was serious about struggle, serious about revolution. And he was bringing a message of deliverance to the Jews, to get the Jews out from under Roman domination. And for many, many years, the things that made Christianity spread like wildfire is because the fact is that Rome dominated so much of the world. And every place people around the world heard about this group of people who was rising up against the Roman Empire. They said, I want to be a piece of that. And so they adopted the philosophy to fight against Rome. And so in the beginning, Christianity was this movement against Roman Empire, against domination, and all the people who were dominated by Rome took it up. And even some Romans who hated what their empire was doing to other people became Christians as well. And the thing got so serious that Rome, for more than 100, 200 years after Jesus was there, they were still fighting these people who were trying to do insurrection all over the Roman Empire. Got so serious, Rome was feeding them to the lions. Oh yeah, they were throwing them in there with the lions, feeding them to the lions. The Christians were. And then they got hip. And in 313 AD, 313 years after they had executed Jesus, you know what? They did Jesus just like they did Terry Rockmore. You should read about it. They got their sticks and beat him all up. You know, they beat him up. The police, they were brutal with Jesus. They stuck a crown on his head that said, the King of the Jews. They said, yeah, you the king of the Jews, right? You know what they were saying to you when they was taking you out? Yeah, you bad now. Isn't that what the police were saying to you? That's what they were saying to Jesus. Yeah. You're the king of the Jews, you bad. Because Jesus was fighting to get a government for the Jews. Yeah. Because the Jews wanted their own government because they were intelligent. And so they had this emperor by now, 313. The emperor is no longer Caesar, but it's a man named Constantine. You've heard of Constantinople? Named after Constantine. Constantine said, hell, we don't have to keep killing them. He says, I'll join them. So Constantine says, I'm going to be a Christian. So he joined the Christians. But he wasn't just a Christian, he became the top Christian. Now, much of what I'm reading to you here in this is what Constantine pulled together. This is the emperor. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is the emperor who the Jews have been fighting against. Now the emperor becomes the chief Christian. He's the head Christian. He's over all the other Christians. The Roman church, the Roman Catholic Church, hear what I'm saying, is structured off of the Roman Empire. It has the same structure that the Roman Empire had. So now you got a new head of the church. Not only do you have a new head of the church, but you got a head of the church going to say what Jesus stood for. And this is the guy who Jesus and his crew was fighting against. So even as I read through this, you can see some of Jesus' stuff got through. But the emperor made sure that whatever he didn't want in there didn't get in there. Think I made it up? You can check it out. Check your history here. I know Reverend Chickenbone don't teach this. Check your history. Check your history. Don't have to listen to me. And you can be upset if you want to, but I didn't do it to you. I'm quoting the scripture here, and I'm telling you what happened. And so what you find is that Constantine now becomes head of the church. So it used to be when Jesus and the other Christians were going out, they were fomenting insurrection against Roman domination. Now the emperor is in charge of Christianity, and he sends out Christians to do what? Sends out Christians to suppress the oppressed peoples of the world. So everywhere you look in the world where people are oppressed, all over Latin America, all over the world, you see the Christians have come now from Rome. You see Catholicism in particular, not just Catholicism, because in particular, all over oppressed countries around the world. Because now it's no longer, the Christianity is no longer the religion of the oppressed, it's the religion of the oppressor. Yeah. It's the religion of the oppressor. Africans in this country were attracted to Christianity because it was the religion of the oppressed. That's why they said, used to sing that song, you know, go down, Moses, way down to Egypt land, tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Now you got niggas who go to Pharaoh to lock his people up. That's what was happening at Murphy's church, ain't it? Say, lock my people up. So they breaking the emperor's laws. And as long as we were out there by ourselves, having to fight against white power by ourselves, then Christianity was something that we saw as the way forward. In fact, when I was a child, when a baby boy was born, the old women used to go and look at the boy and say, is this the one? Because through the whole Christian tradition of sending a deliverer, Africans were looking for somebody to deliver us from this hell. And just like Pharaoh, just like the emperor, just like Constantine, integrated into Christianity, the Negroes here integrated into white power. And when they integrated into white power, the Christianity in our community turned into something else. Had now joined the emperor. As at the moment we joined the emperor, then the Christianity was no longer something that was about fighting against oppression. Christianity was something that was used to keep us oppressed.
Makes sense.
Oh yes. I'm talking about this today, and I'm talking about it because if you look around us, what we are dealing with in terms of the world of ideas, this contest of ideas. It's not a question of capitalism as such, the ideas of capitalism or the ideas of Marxism or the ideas of some other kind of philosophy. The philosophy that we are in contention with is that philosophy that they call Christianity that these Negroes are using against our community, and you need to understand it so that you can go up and you can even tell Reverend Chickenbone that you know the truth. You know who Jesus was. You say, if Jesus was a revolutionary, Reverend Chickenbone, how the hell are you such an Uncle Tom? We got the same program Jesus had. We got a wellness center to heal sick. We got a gym where you can go in and get fitness at, don't we? We fight against the oppressors. Every time you look up at us, we're fighting against the oppressor. And just like Jesus, we want our own government. Want our own government. Want our own government. And ours is also a message of deliverance. And it was brought to us by Garvey and others who told us that if you want your freedom, then you strike out, because Africa is the homeland. Africa is freedom. This is how you find your freedom. You got to have your own philosophy. You can't use somebody else's philosophy to win your freedom. Why you think, if Christianity was what it was when Jesus was around, why ain't they trying to put Murphy on a cross? They ain't trying to put Murphy on a cross. They trying to put Mtundu on a cross. They trying to put the people who stand up for freedom on a cross. In fact, it's the Murphys and the rest of them who act like Pharisees and Sadducees, always trying to trap you and deliver you up to the white man and to the emperor. Is that right? Is that right? We are the ones who carry the legacy of Jesus, not these old handkerchief-head, chicken-eating preachers who've delivered the people up into servitude, and so we ought to act like it. I quoted you scriptures here. You can go and look for yourself. You don't have to believe me. Reverend Chickenbone never told you what it was all about, but I'll tell you, sometimes it's because the nigger didn't know. We're in a war, and key to this war is a war of ideas. The war of ideas. You have to believe in your freedom in order to win it. If you don't want freedom, you can't have it. If you don't strike out for freedom, you can't have it. If you don't believe that you're supposed to be free, you never will be free. There you are. Jesus believed in freedom. John the Baptist believed in freedom. John was an organizer, and Jesus was an organizer too. And Jesus was able to win a whole bunch of people to him because he was able to heal people. He brought a program to the people. And he brought people an understanding of how they had to love each other and get along with each other. And don't be a sellout. That's what Jesus, and he told you. He said, somebody said, well, Jesus, I want to go with you, but you know, there's been a death in the family. He said, let the dead bury the dead, because the most important thing you can do right now is to make this revolution. Isn't that what he said? He said, let the dead bury the dead. We got work to do because the Romans are trying to deal with us. There was no excuse. He wouldn't accept any excuse, and he turned around a whole bunch of folks. Matthew was a tax collector, and the tax collectors was the spies, because they knew the ones who were taking taxes was giving them to the Romans. Here the Romans in Rome living high off the hog, and the Jews in Israel living like pigs, and what have you. So the one who was collecting the taxes for the white man, he was the spies. And he turned Matthew out. And of course you had old Judas. Judas himself was a money keeper. Judas kept the treasury for the group. Judas kept the treasury for the organization. Some people suggest that the reason Judas flipped out because all of them thought that all of these people who were running around, they were looking for a kingdom, they thought that since they was the main organizers and what have you, they was going to be on top, and they was going to have a kingdom like with the Sadducees and all this other kind of structure. But Jesus was trying to raise up the poor. He said, this is the key right here, the poor people. And so there was this incident where Jesus was someplace, and this woman came and washed his hair in perfume. They say the perfume was so expensive, it was worth a year's salary. And Judas freaked out. He said, woman, why are you using all that perfume like that? You understand, we can use that perfume, we can sell that and give the money to the poor or something. And Jesus said, it's cool. Let the woman do this. And some people said that was the thing that freaked Judas out. I said, hell, this joker here ain't trying to get nothing, but we going to have a piece of action. You understand? And I'm going to get me some money right now from the Romans. I suspect Judas was probably an agent. Because Rome, this whole thing about having agents infiltrating organization, it goes back ever since there's been empire. There's been a snitch who worked for the empire. So I wanted to talk to you about that. And I think it's a decent question for you to be able to ask your preacher. Ask him about the revolutionary Jesus. And ask him how they can be so different. And if you look around, what you will see is that your preachers act more like Pharisees and Sadducees than they do like Jesus did. And what I'm telling you this, brothers and sisters, that our deliverance is going to come with our own philosophy. And our own philosophy is that which is going to liberate Africa and give it back to African people scattered around the world. Uhuru.